Love is not a fairy tale. It's a mirror that shows what you truly are when control fades. It strips you down to your rawest instincts, your fear, your craving, your hunger to belong. Every smile, every silence, every trembling heartbeat is a confession that you are no longer your own. That's the truth no one dares to say. Love does not make you whole. It reveals how willing you are to break just to feel alive in someone else's eyes. They say love begins with warmth, but it often starts with tension, a quiet unrest, a strange shift in the way two people occupy the same space. You notice it before they do, the way their tone changes when they speak to you, how their attention stretches longer than it should. This is not affection, it's exposure. When someone starts to fall, their defenses slip, not because they choose to, but because something inside them no longer obeys reason. Every subtle movement, every pause, every act of care is no longer controlled by will. It's instinct bleeding through structure. Watch their eyes. When a person is drawn toward you, their gaze softens, yet carries a quiet desperation. They look as though they're searching for something familiar, something that could anchor them. But what they truly seek is reflection, the part of themselves they lost somewhere in time. Their eyes betray them. Every glance that lingers too long, every shift away when caught, speaks louder than confession. The body reveals what the mouth denies. Then comes the change in tone. The rhythm of their voice alters when they speak to you. You hear hesitation wrapped in warmth, curiosity disguised as casual conversation. The person who once spoke with certainty now edits every word, measuring what might expose too much. They become careful, but not cold. Their speech carries weight, not from intention, but from fear, fear of being seen too clearly. Love is not a choice. It's a surrender of control, and every word they offer trembles with that truth. Their behavior begins to contradict logic. They seek proximity, not through overt gestures, but through quiet persistence. They start appearing where you are, asking meaningless questions just to sustain interaction. They pretend to care about things you mention only once. Every small detail becomes sacred to them. This is not attentiveness, it's fixation dressed as empathy. You'll notice they begin mirroring you, adopting phrases, gestures, even moods. They don't mean to. The mind imitates what it craves. When affection deepens, you'll see restlessness. They want to tell you everything, but fear it might destroy the delicate balance. You'll sense their restraint, the urge to reach out, interrupted by the fear of rejection. That tension between desire and restraint is the truest sign of attachment. People think love is connection, but in truth, it's possession of attention. You begin to live inside their thoughts without asking. They start building entire inner worlds around your presence. Then comes protection. They become subtly defensive when others speak about you, not because they claim ownership, but because they fear competition. You'll catch it in tone, posture, even breath. Their emotions betray a primitive instinct, to guard what feels rare. It's not tenderness, it's survival. The more someone values you, the more they fear losing you. Love and anxiety are inseparable twins born from the same wound. The next stage reveals itself through silence. When someone is falling deeply, words lose meaning. They start relying on quiet moments, shared looks, half smiles, long pauses. They no longer seek conversation, but connection beneath it. You'll feel it, the invisible thread that holds the air heavy between you. They study your reactions, your smallest changes, and feel a sense of triumph when they make you laugh, as if they've earned a secret privilege. That's when you should be careful, because love disguised as worship turns to obsession faster than anyone admits. There's also guilt. When emotion grows stronger, guilt follows. They begin questioning whether they deserve you, whether their feelings cross boundaries. Love makes the moral mind tremble because it demands vulnerability. People who fall deeply start apologizing for things they never did. They become overly cautious, as if one wrong word could collapse the fragile thing they've built. This guilt isn't rational. It's the body's way of acknowledging danger in desire. You'll notice sacrifice creeping in. They begin offering parts of themselves, time, energy, comfort, without being asked. What once felt like generosity now becomes compulsion. They give not because they want to, but because giving feels necessary. Every act becomes a small transaction of hope, a way of securing emotional safety. True affection always hides a silent bargain. If I give enough, maybe you won't leave. Love, in its rawest form, is negotiation disguised as devotion. And then comes vulnerability, the one behavior that shatters the illusion of control. When someone begins to reveal their flaws, fears and failures, it's not always trust. Sometimes it's surrender. They can no longer maintain the performance that once protected them. You've become the mirror through which they confront themselves. The more they open up, the more you see the fractures they once buried. This is where love becomes dangerous. Because once you hold someone's truth, you hold power. You might think this power feels beautiful. Someone exposing their raw self for you. But there's a shadow beneath it. Every confession builds dependency. They start seeking comfort only in your response, and when you pull away, they collapse internally. Their happiness becomes conditional on your attention. That's not connection, that's psychological capture. This is how love transforms from tenderness into control, slowly, subtly, without cruelty. It's a shift from affection to survival instinct. Every human who falls repeats this cycle: curiosity, comfort, attachment, anxiety, sacrifice, dependence. These are not romantic gestures. They are symptoms of the same psychological mechanism that binds people to pain. Because love, when stripped of beauty, is the body's most intelligent form of submission. It teaches the mind to cling, to need, to ache for validation. And the tragedy is that most never see it. They call it passion, fate, or destiny. But underneath, it's hunger, for safety, for recognition, for a place to rest that feels like home. The truth is, love exposes more than it heals. It shows who you are when the mask slips. It reveals the kind of power another person holds over your emotions. Every behavior, the gaze, the silence, the hesitation, is the psyche confessing, "You can hurt me now." That's the truth most people run from. They want the warmth, but not the vulnerability. Yet both come together. Love does not ask for balance. It demands surrender. There is a moment in every deep attachment when logic begins to fade. You'll see it in their small contradictions, the way they act detached yet react instantly when your attention drifts. They pretend they're fine, that they can maintain distance, but their body betrays them. The hands fidget, the breath quickens when you walk by, the pupils widen as if recognizing something sacred. Biology exposes emotion faster than words ever could. Attraction disguises itself as curiosity, but beneath it lies dependency quietly forming its roots. You'll notice how they start seeking your validation in subtle ways. They might change the tone of their message, the rhythm of their laughter, or the way they dress, each act a small plea for recognition. They won't admit it, but every compliment from you becomes a currency of worth. They begin to measure their self-esteem through your approval. It doesn't matter how strong, cold, or independent someone appears, the moment they care how you perceive them. They've already surrendered a part of their power. Watch their patterns. When someone starts falling, their routine bends. They stay up later talking to you, sacrifice rest to prolong connection, shift plans just to coincide with yours. They rationalize it as coincidence, but repetition exposes desire. They stop living entirely for themselves and start shaping life around your presence. That's not romance. That's control disguised as affection. The psyche, when touched by longing, reorganizes itself around its object. They may think they're choosing, but the pull is instinct, not reason. Then comes the fear of exposure. Falling in love is not just attraction. It's a kind of panic. They start protecting their emotions by hiding them. They might withdraw suddenly, grow colder, or act uninterested. That's not rejection. It's self-defense. The heart, once aware of vulnerability, begins to shield itself before the other person can strike. The silence, the distance, the hesitation, those are not signs of disinterest. They are proof of depth. The more someone feels, the harder they fight to appear detached. In those quiet wars between desire and self-preservation, every small reaction matters. They might overanalyze your tone, your pauses, your absence. When love deepens, interpretation replaces clarity. Every unanswered message feels like punishment. Every late reply becomes a question. Do they still care? This obsessive awareness doesn't come from weakness. It's the brain's way of managing emotional threat. Affection, when not returned equally, turns into a study of pain. They start decoding everything you say as if meaning could save them. You'll see them grow quieter in groups. When surrounded by others, they still seek your eyes. Even a small acknowledgement from you grounds them. Their attention splits between pretending to be normal and craving your approval. They want to seem unaffected, but love dismantles composure. They begin losing control of small details, forgetting words, losing track of conversations, stammering through simple moments. They call it nervousness. In truth, it's exposure, the psyche trembling under awareness of being seen. There's also jealousy, not the loud, toxic kind that shouts for control, but the quiet version, the type that hides behind jokes or indifference. When someone is falling, they begin to measure your attention to others. They won't show it directly. They'll ask small questions, test your reactions, or tease lightly, masking insecurity behind humor. But beneath the surface lies fear, the fear of being replaceable. When emotion turns genuine, ego begins to dissolve. Love forces humility, and that surrender terrifies the human mind. Then there's patience. A person falling deeply becomes unusually tolerant of your flaws. They start excusing things they wouldn't for anyone else. The tone of forgiveness shifts. It's not that they don't notice your mistakes. They do. They just decide that losing you would hurt more than being right. That's when affection begins turning into bondage. When someone accepts pain to maintain connection, they've already begun to lose themselves. The boundaries that once defined them blur beneath the weight of attachment. One of the strangest signs is projection. As they fall deeper, they start attributing meaning to your smallest actions. You say a few kind words, and they read devotion. You stay silent, and they feel abandoned. Love amplifies perception. The person falling begins to experience emotional extremes, joy that feels divine, sadness that feels unbearable. The presence of another person becomes a mirror for their deepest desires and wounds. They are not loving you as you are. They are loving what they perceive through the fog of need. With time, they begin to test. The mind, sensing danger in attachment, begins to create small emotional experiments. They'll delay a reply to see how you react, withdraw to gauge your concern, or provoke arguments just to feel secure in your interest. It's a cruel paradox, testing love to prove it exists, destroying peace to confirm connection. But this is how affection protects itself. Love wants to trust, but fear insists on proof. Every test, every emotional game, is an attempt to stabilize the uncertainty that love itself creates. Then comes empathy, the most deceptive behavior of all. When someone is truly falling, they begin to absorb your moods, feel your pain as if it's theirs, and unconsciously adjust their emotions to mirror yours. It appears noble, but it's also dangerous. They begin losing the boundary between self and other. Your sadness becomes their burden. Your silence becomes their discomfort. What starts as care becomes fusion, the slow dissolving of individuality into shared fragility. It feels intimate but quietly consumes both sides. As this descent deepens, the person begins to alter not only their behavior but their identity. They modify opinions, preferences, even dreams to align with yours. They'll say it's compromise, but it's transformation. The desire to be loved often mutates into the desire to become what is loved. It's one of the darkest aspects of affection. People shape themselves around another's expectations until they forget who they were before. Love, in this sense, isn't creation, it's erasure dressed in tenderness. There's a strange serenity that follows. Once they accept their emotions fully, fear transforms into devotion. You'll feel it in how they look at you, not with excitement anymore, but with quiet acceptance, as if their fate has already been written. They stop chasing validation and begin serving the connection itself. They no longer care about balance or fairness. All they want is to maintain the feeling, no matter the cost. This is where love becomes a religion. Worship without reason, faith without guarantee. The mind, once addicted to logic, starts craving unpredictability. They begin to enjoy the pain of uncertainty, mistaking it for depth. The anxiety of love becomes the proof of its existence. That's how the human heart tricks itself, believing that suffering validates affection. They'll tell themselves, if it hurts this much, it must be real. But pain is not proof. It's the echo of dependence taking root. Love, stripped of beauty, is the most sophisticated form of addiction, one that feeds on both pleasure and agony. The truth is, when someone is falling in love, they aren't just revealing affection. They're exposing every weakness they've tried to hide. Every behavior, from nervous laughter to possessive silence, is confession disguised as charm. They aren't showing you who they are. They're showing who they become when their defenses collapse. Love doesn't create purity. It exposes fragility. The person before you isn't blooming. They're unraveling. As love deepens, clarity begins to fade. The person who once saw the world sharply now sees everything through the haze of longing. They start defending you even in your absence, protecting your image in conversations, explaining away your mistakes to others and themselves. This loyalty isn't reasoned, it's instinctive, born from emotional submission. They start to rewrite memory, softening the harsh moments, amplifying the tender ones, twisting reality until it justifies the attachment. Love, in this state, no longer seeks truth, it seeks survival. There's another behavior that often goes unnoticed, the need for constant reassurance. When someone begins to fall, their emotional stability starts depending on how you respond. A delayed text becomes a threat, a brief glance toward someone else a silent betrayal. It's not about control, it's about safety. They've handed you a piece of their self-worth, and now they're terrified you'll drop it. Every moment of silence from you feels like rejection echoing in their chest. Love turns perception into paranoia, affection into anxiety. Then there's vulnerability, the kind that comes disguised as trust. They start revealing secrets, not because they plan to, but because emotional gravity pulls them toward confession. They speak about pain, childhood wounds, fears, mistakes, and you can sense it, the relief and the terror in their tone, the fear that you might judge them, and the greater fear that you won't. This is the paradox of affection. It pushes people to expose the parts they spent years hiding, all to feel known by someone who could easily destroy them with truth. As their attachment grows, self-preservation weakens. They begin doing things that go against their usual logic, traveling far, breaking routines, forgiving too quickly. It's not rational, it's biological surrender. The human brain, once it associates someone with reward, starts releasing the same chemicals linked to addiction. Oxytocin and dopamine turn devotion into compulsion. Love becomes a drug that demands both chaos and calm, alternating between comfort and pain until the person can no longer tell the difference. This emotional intoxication drives another sign: the selective blindness. When someone is falling deeply, they start ignoring red flags they'd normally notice. They explain away inconsistencies, tolerate disrespect, and rationalize the absence of reciprocity. They convince themselves that patience is virtue when it's actually fear of loss. It's not that they don't see the truth, they do. But the cost of acknowledging it feels too high. So they look away, smiling while the cracks grow beneath the surface. Over time, their sense of independence fades. You'll notice it in small shifts. They consult you before making decisions, adjust opinions to match yours, and unconsciously absorb your worldview. They start using your language, mirroring your habits, your expressions. Love, at its most consuming, is mimicry disguised as connection. It's the psyche's way of saying, if I become like you, you can't abandon me. It may feel flattering, but it's also tragic. The deeper they fall, the more they dissolve. Then comes possessiveness. Not always loud, not always visible, but it's there, in the way they monitor your mood. The way they become uneasy when you're distant, the subtle change in tone when someone else captures your attention. They won't always express jealousy directly. Sometimes it leaks through overprotection or excessive interest. Possession in love isn't always about control. It's about fear. The fear that the object of desire has the freedom to walk away. And that freedom, to the one in love, feels like a knife hanging above their peace. When you look closer, you'll see how love begins to distort time. Moments with you pass too quickly, while absence stretches endlessly. They measure days by the rhythm of your responses. Their life starts orbiting around anticipation, waiting for your next word, your next appearance. This psychological phenomenon is simple yet devastating. The more emotionally invested someone becomes, the more the mind reorganizes itself around the unpredictability of affection. Love makes time elastic, bending it to the tension between longing and fulfillment. Eventually, one of the final behaviors appears: the surrender of pride. The person who once guarded their dignity starts apologizing first, even when they aren't at fault. They lower their defenses, allow themselves to look foolish, all for the sake of peace. They start valuing the bond more than their own self-respect. It's the purest and most dangerous stage of affection. When pride collapses, the heart opens completely, but so does the possibility of devastation. Love turns humility into exposure, and exposure into risk. The last sign is silence, not the absence of words, but the quiet understanding that comes when love has consumed everything it can. There's no need for performance anymore, no need to convince or impress. The person falls into a kind of emotional stillness, where connection no longer feels like excitement, but inevitability. They stop asking where this is going, because somewhere deep down, they already know. Love has become their atmosphere, the invisible force that defines their existence. And once that happens, they are no longer falling, they've already fallen. But Schopenhauer's truth lingers behind it all. Love, at its core, is not a gift. It's a trick of nature, a biological illusion that disguises survival as devotion. We chase it believing it brings meaning, but often it strips us of clarity. Every behavior we call romantic, the yearning, The sacrifice, the obsession, is the psyche's way of fulfilling instincts older than reason. Love tells us we've found our other half, but in reality it fractures us, dividing the self into need and fear, pleasure and dependence. The darkness of love is not in cruelty, it's in its honesty. It shows us what we're willing to give up, what boundaries we're willing to erase, what truths we're willing to forget just to feel connected. Every behavior that reveals love also exposes control, weakness, and surrender. That's the hidden paradox. The more someone loves, the less they belong to themselves. And yet, even knowing this, people continue to fall. They crave that vulnerability, the chaos, the temporary illusion of completion. Because somewhere within the pain lies meaning, the feeling of being alive in a world that often feels cold. Love remains both poison and cure, a force that destroys and resurrects in the same breath. It teaches the mind what it means to lose control, and the soul what it means to truly feel. So when you see these behaviors, the nervous laughter, the small sacrifices, the quiet jealousy, the endless forgiveness, know this: you're not just witnessing affection, you're watching the human psyche surrender to one of its oldest instincts. You're seeing someone trade certainty for connection, logic for emotion, control for the possibility of belonging. Love, stripped of fantasy, is not about hearts and promises. It's about exposure. It's about what happens when two people see each other completely and still choose to stay, even when they know it could destroy them. That is the truth buried inside the tenderness, the one that Schopenhauer understood too well. Love is not light. It's shadow disguised as devotion, beauty woven with pain. And those 10 behaviors that reveal someone is falling in love. They are not just signs of affection. They are symptoms of surrender. The quiet proof that, in the pursuit of closeness, the human mind willingly gives up the very thing it values most: freedom.